You're standing there, replaying the conversation in your head, and something doesn't add up. They agreed with you the whole time. They smiled, they nodded, and somehow you still walked away having lost. Not an argument, not a fight, just lost, and you can't even point to the moment it happened. That's the part nobody tells you about power. It rarely looks like power while it's happening. It looks like a conversation, a favor, a compliment. And by the time you feel the outcome, the person who arranged it is already 3 moves ahead, watching you try to figure out what just occurred. We already went through 10 of Machiavelli's tactics. If you thought that was the whole playbook, I need to correct you right now. That was the surface. Today we go deeper, into 10 more moves, colder and more precise than the first list. The ones that separate people who merely survive a room from people who quietly own it. Same rule as before. This isn't so you can go use these on people. It's so nobody ever uses them on you again without you noticing. Let's go. Number 1. Fear outlasts affection. Think about the people who actually change their behavior around you. Is it the ones who like you, or the ones who know there's a real cost if they cross you? Be honest with yourself for a second, because the answer says more than you'd want it to. Affection is soft. It bends the moment convenience shows up. It forgives. It rationalizes. It looks the other way when it's inconvenient not to. Machiavelli didn't dance around this. He argued plainly that affection is held together by a sense of obligation, and obligation is exactly the kind of bond that people quietly break the instant their own interest pulls hard enough in a different direction. Fear doesn't have that weakness, because it isn't built on goodwill in the first place. It's built on consequence, and consequence doesn't evaporate just because someone's mood changes. There's an old line that captures this well. A scared dog barks less, but it also bites less. People who understand there's a real cost to crossing you will self-regulate without you ever having to raise your voice or say a single word about it. You don't have to threaten anyone. You just have to be someone whose response actually lands with weight when it needs to. Here's where this shows up in daily life. Quietly, constantly, the manager everyone secretly respects, most usually, isn't the one who's endlessly nice. It's the one whose word carries real consequence, whose no actually means no, whose disappointment actually costs you something. People tell themselves they want a boss who's liked. What they actually respond to, structurally, is a boss who's respected in a way that has teeth. Now here's the dark side, because this cuts both ways. Someone can build a fear-based dynamic around you without ever calling it that. It doesn't announce itself as fear. It just feels like walking on eggshells, like you're always managing someone's temperature, like agreement feels safer than honesty. That's fear wearing a softer name. Your counter-move is to notice where your behavior is being shaped by consequence instead of respect. Ask yourself plainly, am I doing this because I actually believe in it, or because I'm managing what happens if I don't? Once you can tell the difference, you stop being steered by people who were never actually earning your cooperation, just extracting it. And here's the part most people never connect. The reason fear-based respect outlasts affection-based liking isn't because people are cruel by nature. It's because affection requires ongoing maintenance, constant reassurance, constant proof that the relationship is still worth preserving. Respect that carries real weight doesn't need that upkeep. It just needs to be established once, consistently, and it holds on its own after that. Drop this one in the comments. I answer to respect, not fear. Number 2, be both the fox and the lion. Strength alone gets ambushed by people smarter than you. Cleverness alone gets crushed by people stronger than you. You need both, and more importantly, you need to know which one the moment in front of you actually calls for. Machiavelli's own framing was exact on this point. A ruler has to imitate the fox and the lion together, because the lion can't protect himself from traps, and the fox can't defend himself from wolves. One without the other leaves an entire flank exposed. Translation for real life: brains catch the trap before you ever step in it. Strength handles what's already caught you, once the trap has already sprung, and thinking your way out isn't an option anymore. Most people only ever build one of these muscles and assume it's enough. There's a proverb that fits here better than almost anything else. The wolf that only howls never eats. Noise isn't strategy. Neither is pure aggression without awareness of what's actually in front of you. People love picking a single identity and hiding behind it like it's a personality trait instead of a limitation. I'm just a nice person. I don't play games. Fine. Until someone plays one on you anyway, and you realize you never built the fox side at all. So you never even saw it coming until it was already finished. Here's the everyday version. The coworker who's genuinely warm in every meeting but still reads every single email twice, checking tone, checking what's implied and not said. That's fox and lion working together in miniature. Warmth on the surface, awareness underneath. Not contradictory. Complementary. The dark side is someone using the fox first, disarming you completely with charm and warmth, and only switching to the lion once your guard is already fully down and you're not braced for pressure anymore. Your counter move is simple to say and harder to actually live. Keep both settings active at once. Being warm doesn't require you to stop watching the board. The two aren't opposites, whatever most people assume. This is also why the most dangerous people in any room are rarely the loudest ones. They're the ones who've mastered switching between the two without you noticing the switch happen. One moment they're disarming you with warmth, the next they're negotiating like it never happened, and you're left trying to figure out which version was real. Both were. That's the entire point. Comment this below. I stay soft and sharp. Number 3. Don't wound, resolve completely. Half measures create enemies who have a grudge and nothing left to lose, which is the single most dangerous combination that exists. Machiavelli's advice here was almost mathematically cold, and once you understand the logic, you can't unsee it anywhere. He argued that people should either be won over completely or dealt with so decisively that retaliation stops being a realistic option, because a small injury breeds resentment and a slow grudge, while a serious, complete resolution leaves no room for revenge to even take shape. Grim when you say it out loud like that. But look around at real situations and you'll see the pattern constantly. A watered-down apology after a genuine betrayal doesn't rebuild anything. It just documents the betrayal in writing and leaves both people pretending it's closed when it clearly isn't. Old proverb, blunt as ever, don't wound the snake, kill it, or leave it alone entirely. Anything in between just guarantees you get bitten later when you're not expecting it and your guard is already back down. In practice, this shows up constantly at work. If you're addressing a real conflict with a colleague, half addressing it doesn't create peace. It just delays round 2, and round 2 always arrives quieter and angrier than round 1, because now there's history attached to it. The dark side of this one is someone doing it to you deliberately, offering you a symbolic, incomplete resolution designed to look generous on the surface, while the actual issue underneath stays completely untouched. You walk away thinking something got fixed. Nothing did. Your counter is to stop quietly accepting partial closure just because it's socially easier in the moment. Ask directly, is this actually resolved, or are we just agreeing to postpone it and call that peace. There's a reason this feels so uncomfortable to hear. Most of us are raised to believe that partial peace is still peace, that meeting halfway is always the mature move. Sometimes it is. But when the underlying issue never actually got addressed, halfway isn't maturity, it's just a slower path back to the same conflict, dressed up as closure so everyone can stop talking about it. Comment below, I don't accept half closure. Number 4, seeming is the game people actually play. You are judged almost entirely on what's visible, not on what's true underneath it, whether that feels fair or not. Machiavelli said this almost flatly. People judge far more by what they see than by what they can actually verify with their own hands. And most people only ever see the surface version of you, never the real one underneath. That's not cynicism. That's just an accurate description of how perception actually works in practice, whether we like admitting it or not. Old saying that fits perfectly here. Still water looks calm from the shore. Nobody standing on the bank has any idea what the current underneath is actually doing. Everyday example, one you've probably lived through yourself. The person who seems organized in every meeting gets handed more responsibility and more trust, completely independent of what their actual process looks like behind the scenes at 11 at night. Perception got rewarded. Substance was never actually audited. Here's the dark side. Someone can build an entire reputation purely on managed appearance, while the actual substance underneath never once matches what's being projected. That's exactly how you end up with those moments where everyone says I never would have guessed, because nobody was ever looking past the surface to begin with. Your counter move is to judge slower, on purpose. Watch what someone actually does under real pressure, not what they perform for you when things are calm and comfortable and there's an audience watching. This is uncomfortable to accept because it means the trust you've extended to people in your own life was probably built on a handful of visible moments, not on the full picture. Nobody has the full picture of anyone. The best you can do is widen your sample size before you decide someone's trustworthy, instead of locking it in after one strong first impression. Drop this comment, I watch actions, not performances. Number 5, never depend on strength you don't own. Borrowed power always comes with someone else's terms, quietly attached to it, even when nobody says that part out loud. Machiavelli was direct about this too. He warned that relying on strength that belongs to someone else is a trap, because power that isn't genuinely yours tends to do one of 3 things. It slips away right when you need it most. It becomes a burden you're now responsible for managing. Or worst of all, it ends up controlling you instead of the other way around. Old proverb, simple but true, the borrowed coat never quite fits right, no matter how good it looks from a distance. Here's the everyday version. The person whose entire influence at work is tied completely to one powerful mentor or one key relationship. The instant that mentor leaves or that relationship changes, so does all of their leverage, and they genuinely never saw it coming. Because it never felt borrowed, while it was actively working in their favor. The dark side of this one, used against you specifically, looks like someone offering to handle things on your behalf, quietly making themselves the load-bearing wall inside your own situation, until you're fully dependent on their continued goodwill just to keep functioning normally. Your counter-move is to build capability that you personally hold, not access that you're only ever borrowing from someone else's generosity. Notice this pattern the next time someone offers to fix something for you, instead of teaching you how to fix it yourself. Convenience in the moment, dependency down the line. The offer usually feels generous. It rarely is. Purely, comment this, my power is mine. Number 6, adapt or get left behind by your own habits. The exact trait that made you successful once can become the thing that quietly ends you later if you never bother updating it as circumstances change around you. Machiavelli's warning here was precise and almost uncomfortable in how well it still applies. He said a man accustomed to acting one particular way rarely changes that pattern, and ruin arrives specifically when the times shift underneath him and his old methods no longer match the new reality he's actually operating in. Old line that says the same thing more simply: the same fire that cooks your meal will burn your house down if you never move it once the wind changes direction. Real-life version of this. The friend who was hilarious and blunt back in college and never once adjusted that setting for a boardroom 15 years later, genuinely confused about why the exact same energy that used to get laughs is now landing as arrogance instead of charm. The dark side here is that people will happily let you keep failing with an outdated approach, because your predictability quietly benefits them in some way, and pointing it out would cost them that advantage. Your counter-move is brutal honesty with yourself, on a schedule, not just when things go wrong. Ask directly what worked 5 years ago that might now be quietly working against you. The hardest part of this one isn't spotting it in other people. It's spotting it in yourself while it's still working just well enough that you don't feel the need to question it yet. By the time it's obviously failing, you've usually already lost more than you needed to. Comment below, I evolve on purpose. Number 7. Read someone by who's standing next to them. You can't always audit a person directly, not in the time you actually have available, but you can almost always audit their circle instead, and it tells you nearly as much. Machiavelli's method for judging a ruler applies just as well to anyone you're evaluating in ordinary life. The surest way to gauge someone's real character and judgment is to look closely at exactly who they've chosen to keep close to them over time. Old proverb, blunt as ever: show me your friends, and I'll tell you your future before you do. Everyday application. Before trusting a new business partner with something that matters, look at who they've already burned through in the past, and notice who's still standing beside them years later, regardless. That tells you more in 5 minutes than an entire pitch meeting ever will. The dark side is that people can and do curate their circle publicly, on purpose, to manufacture credibility, surrounding themselves visibly with respectable names while the actual dealings that matter happen somewhere else entirely, out of view. Your counter-move is to look specifically at long-term relationships, not photo-op ones. Anyone can stand next to someone impressive for a single picture. Almost nobody can fake a decade, and this cuts both directions, which most people conveniently forget. If you want to be judged well, the fastest way isn't managing your own image harder. It's being more selective about who you keep close, because eventually people will judge you exactly the same way you're learning to judge them. Comment this: I check the company kept. Number 8. Flattery is a door, so control who gets to open it. Praise feels harmless precisely because it feels good, and that's exactly what makes it dangerous when it's used with intention. Machiavelli's actual fix for this wasn't to reject compliments outright. It was smarter than that. He said the only real defense against flattery is making it unmistakably clear to the people around you that honesty will never cost them your favor. In other words, if telling you the truth stays safe, flattery quietly loses its leverage over you. Proverb that captures it well: sugar catches the flies, but it also rots the teeth over time. Everyday version of this: the employee who only ever tells the boss exactly what the boss wants to hear, because every single honest update in the past got met with a cold, defensive reaction. That boss is now flying completely blind and has no idea it's even happening. The dark side is obvious once you see it. Someone keeps you comfortable and flattered on purpose, specifically so you never end up hearing the one thing you actually needed to hear from them. Your countermove is to reward the person who disagrees with you well every single time, and to make that reward visible so others see it happen too. The uncomfortable question to ask yourself is who around you has stopped being honest with you, and when exactly that started. It's rarely sudden. It's usually a slow retreat, one soft reaction at a time, until the honest version of that person simply stopped showing up around you. Comment below. Tell me the truth. Always. Number 9. Anyone changing the game inherits instant enemies. The moment you attempt something genuinely new, you're not just building something. You're simultaneously painting a target on yourself, whether you intended to or not. Machiavelli treated this almost like a law of nature rather than an opinion. He wrote that nothing is harder to carry out than introducing a new order of things, because everyone who quietly benefited from the old arrangement instantly becomes your enemy, while the people who might eventually benefit from the new arrangement stay cautious and lukewarm right up until it's already proven itself. Old saying that fits perfectly: the nail that stands up gets hammered down first, every time, regardless of whether standing up was the right call. Real-world version: the person who proposes a genuinely better process at work and gets immediate quiet resistance from everyone comfortable with the old broken one, while the people who would actually benefit most from the change stay completely silent until it's already succeeded, and it's safe to agree with it out loud. The dark side is that people will happily let you absorb all the risk of going first, and then simply show up once the outcome is already safe and proven. Your countermove is to expect that resistance before it ever arrives, so it doesn't rattle you or make you second-guess yourself the moment it actually shows up. Knowing this in advance changes how the resistance feels when it arrives. Instead of reading it as proof you were wrong, you can read it as confirmation you were actually early, which is a very different feeling and a much more useful one. Comment this: I move first anyway. Number 10. Win through design, not force. Force is loud, expensive, and it creates a story that everyone involved remembers for a long time afterward. Positioning someone quietly into an outcome is silent, and it leaves no scar behind for anyone to point to later. Machiavelli's own words on this were almost a dare to the reader: never attempt to win through force something that could be achieved through deception instead, not because force fails, but because it's the clumsier, costlier tool available to you. Old proverb that fits this perfectly: the river never fights the rock directly. It simply goes around it, patiently, and wears it down completely anyway, over time, without ever needing to announce the confrontation. Everyday version: instead of demanding a change directly and triggering immediate resistance from everyone involved, you quietly restructure the available options so the outcome you actually wanted becomes the obvious. Natural conclusion everyone arrives at on their own. No direct confrontation required anywhere in the process. The dark side here is a big one, so pay close attention. This is exactly how people get maneuvered into decisions that were never genuinely their own to begin with, while still feeling completely certain they chose it themselves. Your countermove is the same instinct from earlier in this list, when an outcome suddenly feels obvious, or natural, or inevitable. Pause immediately and ask who actually benefited from it looking that way to you. This is the quietest tactic on the entire list, and probably the most common one you'll encounter in ordinary life, precisely because it never announces itself as a tactic at all. It just feels like things naturally working out a certain way. They rarely just work out. Someone usually built the path. Comment below: I question what feels obvious. The real takeaway is that these patterns are already running around you constantly, every single day, whether you ever bother naming them or not. Machiavelli didn't invent manipulation. He just refused to pretend it wasn't already happening in every room of power he ever stepped into. The discomfort people still feel reading him 500 years later isn't because he was wrong about people. It's because he was right, and most people would genuinely rather not know that about the world they live in. You now know. What you actually do with that knowledge is the only part of this that was ever up to you in the first place. Use it to stop getting quietly outmaneuvered. Use it to see the room more clearly than you used to. That's the entire point of putting this together. If one of these 10 hit different, then tell me exactly which one in the comments, and tell me who you thought of while you were watching it. I read every single one of them. Stay sharp, stay 2 steps ahead of the room, and I'll see you in the next one.